Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Brian's Vlog!
Yay!
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 How you doing out there, Helix fans and ships at sea? Haven't done a blog in a long time. Seemed like the time to do it. It's February 28th. A leap year coming once in 4. February is one day more. Today I'd like to talk to you about the old Canadian bar circuit. There was also one in the United States, of course. But it's been coming up in conversation a lot lately with young guys that I talk to, especially. They don't know how to get out there and actually get their music in front of people. I kind of feel sorry for them. Back when we started in 1974, there was a very vibrant bar scene right from coast to coast across the country. The way it used to work was you'd get signed to a booking agency. In our case, it was Dram out of Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario. And the booking agency would first send you out to the B circuit in Northern Ontario. And if you survived that, and it was kind of a birth of fire, but if you survived playing up in Northern Ontario, then they start to put you in more A rooms. And then once you graduated to that, then they'd send you out to the East Coast, which was very difficult too. And then if you could survive in all those markets, then they'd send you out to Western Canada, and Western Canada was great. Whereas in Ontario, for instance, we'd go into rooms where, you know, the toilets were filled to the brim and hadn't been flushed in the last 6 months. In the band rooms. Out west, we had nice rooms, cable TV. It was like we had died and gone to heaven. But the reason the Canadian bar scene was so important was because it was where we learned to hone our craft as a band. We'd go out there, we had to do 3 to 5 sets a night. In some of these bars, we played 6 nights a week. So you learn how to, first off, put together a set. How to introduce songs, how to entertain an audience. We were taught, for instance, that we only had certain things at our disposal to entertain with: our hands, you could gesture, our eyes, looking at the audience, and our bodies. So we learned, for instance, never to say, look at our watch while we were talking to people in the audience, to always turn around when we took a drink. In fact, we weren't even supposed to wear a watch on stage when we first started playing. You were supposed to have your set times down that they ended at exactly when they were supposed to, period. We had different people in the band that would speak between the songs. Anyway, all that stuff we learned in the bars from night after night after night, and we used to keep fine-tuning the show. And I used to think that you could spend your whole entire career going over the show in the basement, but there's nothing like one night in stage to tighten everything up. And that's how we earned our spurs as a band. We started out playing places like Kapuskasing or Kapuskasing in Northern Ontario. That was a Kapuskasing Inn. We went to the Queens and Hirsch. We played the Waverly and the Landmark and Thunder Bay. Then we went out to the West Coast, or the East Coast rather, and we played Zapatos in Halifax and the Hilltop in Fredericton and the Wiki-Whack Club in Shediac. In fact, at the Wiki-Whack Club, the thing I remember the most was a guy come up to us after the set and he went, if you guys had a fiddle player, you'd be pretty good. Anyway, I digress. The bar scene, once again, was where we developed our craft, and you had to go over the same on Yonge Street as you did in, I don't know, Flin Flon, Manitoba. So you had to have a well-versed set, and you had to learn how to entertain in both places. And we traveled right across the country, and we soaked up all the flavor of those local towns and cities, and it made us a much more worldly band, much more an international sounding band. It may sound a bit blasphemous, but we always consider ourselves more of an American sounding band than a Canadian band. And because we could never really picture Helix on Canadian radio, stuck between, I don't know, Trooper, Here for a Good Time, nothing against those guys, they're friends of mine, but we could never imagine a Helix song be between a Trooper song and, say, I know, Edward Bear, thinking of you down in Mexico. It just, it just stuck out like a sore thumb, and we didn't get much airplay in Canada, but we developed as a band in the bars, and we got that overall sound. We used to put our set list together by picking songs out of Billboard, which once again made us an international band. And because we would always be about a month or two ahead of what would eventually end up in Canada, become a hit in States first, and then 2 months later it started to pick up in Canada, and then bands, cover bands, because everybody was a cover band back then, would start to pick up on the song. But we would, right when the albums came out, we'd be playing them songs by ZZ Top and Leonard Skinner, Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, and we were a heavier band too. So, but the bar circuit, it's a shame that it's disappearing in Canada. It's disappearing because of financial reasons that I predicted 10 years ago. In a bar, bars depend on the liquor sales and the door. Those two avenues of revenue. Festivals nowadays, or casinos, don't have that problem. In fact, in casinos, the main focus in a casino is to draw people in so they gamble. They probably make as much on the gambling floor as they do from the band the whole night long. Their goal is to draw people to the venue. So the booze sales in the door don't even really kind of enter into it after an extent. So bars face an uphill battle, and a lot of bars today are, held together with clothespins. They got what I call Frankenstein PAs. Everything's mismatched. They got poor sight lines. They're not nice places, a lot of them, I hate to say it. And back in the day when we, thrived in those type of venues, they're not quite the same as they used to be. People don't really follow bands, I don't find, like they used to. But for Helix especially, a better venue to see the band is in a concert situation. Part of the problem we got working against us in that regard, playing bars, is just the fact that people during the 80s saw us in a concert situation. So now to see us in a bar or a much smaller venue, quite frankly, doesn't look good in the band a lot of times. So big venues is where we've gone back to. The bar circuit, the biggest thing that it's going to hurt in the music industry is the fact that young bands will not be able to develop their talent. They need to have that day after day after day of honing the show, the music, traveling from town to town to soak up those influences of, Tisdale, Saskatchewan versus Halifax, Nova Scotia. Support your local bar. And that's about all I got to say for today's Brian's vlog, February the 28th, 2018.